Patrick Little here, running for POTUS in 2020. Working on my campaign to...
Upside down, Nick.
Sorry about that. Working to expel the Jew by 22. Vote for me in 20. So let's go ahead and start telling the people the good word, the good news that the country can be free again. So, which way to Princeton? Which way to Princeton? All right. Oh, here's the key.
Okay.
Good afternoon, folks. Patrick Little running for office in 2020. How are you doing today? I'd like to discuss the issue of dual citizenship. Yes, that's correct. It's a political issue. Okay, thank you. Warm out today. See if this gentleman wants to talk. Good afternoon, sir. Patrick Little. I'm running for office. I was wondering if you had a moment.
I do not have to go back to work. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. All right. Good afternoon, ma'am. Patrick Little. I'm running for office in 2020. I was wondering if you had a moment to discuss some key issues facing the country. Okay, so do you know what the biggest lobby in this country is? I'm going to give you a hint. It's a lobby for a foreign government. It's bigger than oil, gas, pharmacy, agribusiness, all that combined. You want to guess? It's a lobby for a foreign country. You want to guess what country? Nope. I'm going to give you a hint. This country has a higher standard of living per capita than the United States, but they get more foreign aid from us than all of the other countries we get foreign aid to combined. Going to give you another hint. It's in the Middle East. Minister Farrakhan talks about this. You heard of Minister Farrakhan?
Yeah.
Well, the country is Israel. I got some more facts for you here. Now, what if I were to tell you, going back to Roman times, historians have documented the slave trade as being a nearly exclusively Jewish trade. So I'm going to quote the 1860 U.S. Census here, as well as Minister Farrakhan, who was a black civil rights advocate. And go ahead and just quote that 40% of Jews in this country before the Civil War owned African slaves. Crazy. That's almost half of them, right? Do you know what percentage of non-Jewish whites owned slaves in this country before the Civil War? It's going to shock you. It's really low. It's less than 1%. So what I'd like to do is take the aid we're currently giving to the terrorist state of Israel that's using the money to commit genocide against ethnic and religious minorities in the Middle East, and give it as reparations to African Americans that can prove they're descended of African slaves in this country. And so I'm hoping then that this will make the signature gathering in 2020 a lot easier for the primary, so I can appear on the Democrat ballot. By the way, I'm running as a Democrat. My name is Patrick Little. Do you want to talk about any important issues facing you as an African American in this upcoming election cycle? Job. So in order to get a good job, it helps to have a good education, right? Well, what if I were to tell you there's one group that makes up less than 2% of the U.S. population? So less than 2 out of every 100 people in this country make up 67%, or over 2/3 of the graduate students at Harvard. Now, would you not agree that Harvard, Princeton, schools like that, you get a degree from there, and your chances of doing well in life are going for the roof? Good jobs, right? Now, Jews are less than 2.5% of top-performing high school students, but they take up 2/3 of the graduate student seats at Harvard. That's not fair, is it? It's pretty crazy, right?
Yeah.
Now, we've heard a lot in the news lately about white supremacism at Harvard and elite universities and all that. Now, the crazy thing about this is that whites are about 65% of the population, right? And correspondingly, whites are also about 65 to 70% of the top-performing high school students. It's like a one-for-one. You're a percentage of the population, you're represented then of top-performing high school students. So whites, being about 2/3 of the country, are also about 2/3 of top-performing high school students. Do you know what percentage of the incoming class at Harvard in 2017 was ethnically white, not Jewish? Even though we were 66 or so percent of the top-performing high school students.
Yeah.
A lot less than 66%, I can tell you. Do you want to guess?
27%?
Lower.
20, you said lower?
Lower.
About 10%?
A little bit higher. 12%. You were close. Now, that's pretty crazy. How can Harvard be white supremacist when whites are almost none of the students at Harvard and Jews are almost all of the students at Harvard grad school, when Jews make up almost no percentage of the population? Now, have you ever been Orthodox? Lakewood, New Jersey, where Orthodox Jews were stealing. They were lying about how many kids they had. They were lying about the different services they provided the community and getting all sorts of the social services money. You lose your job. You talked earlier about jobs. Jobs are important, right? Well, it's also important to have that social safety net if something goes wrong in the employment market, right? Now, what happens to that social safety net when you got a bunch of Jews lying about stealing millions of dollars from the government, from the taxpayer that are there providing the safety net?
Yeah.
It makes things a lot harder. It stretches out that safety net pretty far. And I'm going to tell you, if you look up the Orthodox Jews steal millions, Social Security fraud, you're going to learn about what's happening to all that Social Security money. Now, these programs are pretty well funded, but the problem is it's just like Harvard. Jews are taking up all the good stuff from everyone else. So, Lakewood, look it up. The Orthodox Jews have stolen millions of Social Security benefits that otherwise would have gone to needy families with kids. Now, you want those good jobs for your kids, you want them to have a decent shot at getting at Harvard or Princeton or other good schools. In order for that to happen, you got to stop Jewish supremacism, which is a massive overrepresentation of Jews in our government, in our institutions, and in our business. My name is Patrick Little. I'm hoping you might consider voting for me in 2020, and I would invite you to invite the last two books written by Minister Farrakhan, The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews. It talks all about the Jewish domination of the black slave trade going back hundreds of years.
Your name is
Patrick Little, littlerevolution.us.
Okay. And you're running for
President,
2020?
2020, as a Democrat.
All right.
I want to stop that aid to Israel and use that money here at home.
All right.
All right, thank you, miss. Good afternoon, folks. Would you like to talk about the terrorist state of Israel?
No.
Okay. Where's the button to cross the road? Afternoon, folks. My name is Patrick Little. I'd like to end dual citizenship with the terrorist state of Israel. Do you know about the genocide happening in Palestine that's being funded with U.S. taxpayer dollars? No? What did he say?
He said it was strange.
Strange. Oh. Well. Oh, they're hooked on the duck rail. All right. So you guys are just there in case they attack the cameraman again. So you probably want to hang back a little bit.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, folks. Can I tell you about the Jewish legacy of slavery in this country? 40% of Jews before the Civil War owned African slaves compared to less than 1% of non-Jewish whites. Would anyone like to talk about how that was based here in New England, Connecticut, and Rhode Island? No? All right. Well, we're going to keep on spreading the good word here, hopefully turn out some primary voters in 2020. We're going to win that Democratic primary election. I hope you're excited out there. So, is the stream still going?
Yep.
Excellent. So, got any questions from the audience, from the voters out there? Any concerns of the electorate?
Not yet.
Not yet? All right. So we're about to go near Princeton and walk around, talk to some students. We were at Boston University and Harvard the other day. Let's see if we can't stir up some voters here. If they're concerned about social justice, they're going to be all about my message here on the sign.
Someone asked you, will you expel only non-citizen Jews?
Well, my question is, during World War II, Marines landed in Iwo Jima. Did they approach every single Japanese person that was in uniform on the beach, shooting at them and ask first before I return fire on you, let me ask, do you support the admirals that bombed Pearl Harbor? Do you support the ambitions of Imperial Japan? No? Okay, let me get back to my fighting position. Don't shoot at me while I'm getting there. I'll shoot at someone else. And that's an example of when you have ethnic conflict, like the Jews so strongly identify this as an ethnic conflict. It's very hard to see individuals because Jews have more ethnocentricity than any other group on the planet, and this is according to every metric. What is it called? The R score or something like that? Dr. Kevin McDonald mentioned that.
Yes.
It was the metric for measuring ethnocentricity. Jews are off the charts And just to give you an idea about how hate-filled the average Jew is, let's talk about a survey that was conducted a few years ago. Now, there was a survey conducted where the Jews were asked two simple questions. One was a control question, and one was there to test for their level of hatred against whites. So, the first they asked, do you support affirmative action? And the majority of them supported it. That's the control question. Now comes the test for hatred. When asked if they supported affirmative action in such a way that it hurt whites, when there was malice involved, it jumped 10 points. In other words, at least 10% of them are more likely to favor a policy if it's explicitly anti-white than if it isn't. And we can talk about their denial of the right to exist of the Palestinian people, both Muslim and Christian, religious and ethnic minorities in the Middle East, their sponsorship of ISIS and their attempt to eradicate what they see to be competing cultures such as the ancient Assyrians, Christians by the way. We can talk about the 33% of Armenians that openly identify as people that know about historical Jewish crimes against humanity, the involvement of the Jews in enticing the Young Turks into committing a genocide against the Armenians, the involvement of the Jews in the 85% Jewish government of the Soviet Union in the 20s and 30s, in exterminating 30 million Christian ethnic Europeans who were exterminated because of their religious beliefs and their race. And you got to remember, this Jewish government of the USSR started by exterminating the priests and the monks first, along with little Anastasia, who they raped to death before they killed her. So, got to remember, with Jews you lose, especially in government. And so if you care about the children, if you care about the ethnic and religious minorities, you've got to do what's been done 500 times before, and that is address Jewish supremacism. So, it's time to talk about crimes against humanity with these people here. Good afternoon, folks. My name's Patrick. All right. Well, thank you. Well, let's see. Good afternoon, folks. Anyone here care to learn about the Holodomor, where Jews exterminated 30 million Christians in the former Soviet Union in the 1920s and 1930s? Anybody?
Tell me hate toilets.
All right. I don't hear any English being spoken here. We'll keep going. This must be the international program here. Lots of tourist bus, yeah.
Which do you think is more dangerous, secular or atheist Jews?
Walk around the square down there.
Are hemlock pills more dangerous than hemlock drinks? I don't know. Pick your delivery mechanism. You've got to remember here, we're talking about the most genocidal people in history. The people have been credited with the destruction of more nations than any plague, than any type of natural disaster or anything else. We're talking about people that are traditionally nation wreckers and genocide committers. People that will kill based on ethnic and religious interests, as well as the attempt to suppress any ideas that they don't agree with. So Jews are inherently anti-American as a group. Now, individuals, there may be exceptions, but when it comes to the destruction of the country, you don't have time to settle down with every one of the other soldiers and ask whether they agree with the program of the others. Oh, all right.
There's a square down here.
All right. Now, you probably want to be towards the back there. Oh, there, just a moment. Do you want to hold the sign for me? There we go. All right. So, any questions from the constituency out there? The whole constituency would be the United States, by the way. Any states I haven't been to yet that got any questions for me?
Let's see. How would you go about dismantling the Fed?
Well, that ties in with what the message is today, which is remove Jews from power. Cease to exist. So we still had immigration, allowed to do their jobs, et cetera, amnesty after amnesty, even under Reagan. My question is, does a country have a right to control its borders and its immigration?
Absolutely.
And this is ancient Constantinople. Who are the historians who opened the gates there? Okay, they're the same people that are reported to having opened the gates of Visigothic Spain to the invading hordes in the 8th century. Same group. I'm going. Anyhow, So my next question would be, same group, do you know the name of the group that in the 1920s and 30s made up 85% at politician levels of congressmen or higher? They were called commissars, and who outlawed criticism of their group, outlawed Christianity, outlawed marriage, and made women public property. Also outlawed firearm ownership. Same people that are behind the opening of our borders here. You go down to San Diego, the lawyers down there, the Lawyers Guild that was handing out the forms where people could find loopholes to come in when the big caravan of people hit the border. You remember that a few months back?
Yeah.
They were of this ethnic group. Do you want to guess what that ethnic group is? It was illegal to criticize this ethnic group in the Soviet Union. All right, I'm going to give you one more hint. Before the Civil War, 40% of them owned African slaves versus less than 1% of non-Jewish whites. Just gave you a hint. You want to guess what ethnic group I'm talking about? I'm talking about ethnic Jews. Now, you may think it's just a religion, right?
Yes.
If you're converted to Orthodox, would you be allowed to move to Israel? Like an ethnic conversion?
I don't think so.
Nope. Can you imagine if in America we're going to administer a blood test, and unless you, what were the original calling it? You pass a blood test, you are going to Congress, the American Committee of Jewish Synagogues and all this, a whole bunch of Jewish organizations, and they paid $10 to get up on the form. Now, since then, America's got... Yeah, I'm going to tie that in with a survey that happened a few years ago. On a survey recently, people were asked what your ethnicity is and what your attitude towards affirmative action were, and what your attitudes towards affirmative action were in such a way that it hurt whites. You want to know how Jews answered this one? So, a majority of Jews supported affirmative action. Okay, that's the control question. Now the test for hatred question came in. How many of you support, do you support affirmative action such that it hurts whites? The percentage of Jews that supported this jumped 10%. So, affirmative action, just for fairness and such, the majority of them. You mentioned that in such a way that it hurts whites, and the number of Jews that support it go up. Now, does that show malice to you? Have you heard a lot about white supremacy and stuff in the news, in the movies, checking white privilege, all that, right?
Yeah.
Now, what if I were to tell you that we're right next to Princeton University? Right over that building is Princeton, right? What if I were to tell you that elite universities like Princeton are overwhelmingly Jewish and they're overrepresented? The answer is non-Jewish white in the Civil War according to the 1860 U.S. Census. 0.8%. So Jews were 50 times more likely to own a slave than a white. But what the media is constantly showing who is being behind the slave trade. White Christians, right? Well, the funny thing is, according to the Roman historian Tacitus, about 2,000 years ago, guess who controlled the slave trades of Northern Europe, the Mediterranean, North Africa, Arabia, and what later became the Ottoman Empire, Asia Middle, as well as southern Caucasoid region, which you could call nowadays like the Caucasus region of some Russia. Who controlled? Well, the answer's on the poster there. Crazy, right?
I can't. I'm Jewish.
Okay, very good. Now, let's talk about 67% of the Harvard graduate school. Jews are less than 2% of the U.S. population, right? 1.7% to be exact, right? Do you know what percentage of Harvard graduate school body is made up of ethnic Jews? You think, they're less than 2%.
What does religion have to do with anything?
If you want to move to Israel, so let's say I'm 100%.
Why would I want to move to Israel?
Theoretically, someone who's purebred Scandinavian wants to move to Israel. They convert to Orthodox Judaism. They say they believe that Israel is the Holy Land. They believe that the way the Jews do their religion is the perfect way. They do a full faith conversion to Orthodox Judaism, like the strictest type. Do you think they're allowed to move to Israel? Nope, because they can't pass the blood test. You have to pass a blood.
An American president wants to move to Israel. What does that have to do with America?
I'm talking of, they're the strongest lobby in Washington by an order.
Comments are coming off very bigoted, right? Like pinpointing and scapegoating like the Jewish race.
Now I'm talking about statistical average. Well, yes, fine. All right, thank you. Well, hopefully they're going to verify some of those things. Jewish media. You can't see them for what they are. And that is their deep-seated ethnic hatred of people they see as regional competitors is off the charts. So if you email me at pat@littlerevolution.us, I will describe how Israel has been supporting ISIS. I'll describe how Israel has been behind the extermination of ethnic and religious minorities throughout the Middle East. and I'll explain how Jews presided over the largest genocide in history at the time, in the 1920s and 1930s in the Soviet Union. So, let's keep on waking some people up here. Good afternoon, folks. Are you registered to vote for 2018-2020?
Yeah.
My name's Patrick Little, and I'd like to let you know about Jewish supremacism and how it's destroying the country.
I would love to know that, but this guy needs a broken honest.
Are you you're a Nazi?
What's a Nazi?
I don't know.
Well, let me ask, was all of the 500 countries to expel Jews before the Third Reich, were they all Nazis?
You're Nazi.
What is a Nazi?
You.
Why?
You should really go fuck yourself.
Thank you. Don't forget to vote Little in 2020.
Anti-white.
Anti-white.
You're in the wrong town, buddy.
Hold on, she's saying I'm anti-white? Oh, we got some fellow white
they
people.
call her anti-white.
Oh, good afternoon, sir. Can I tell you about the Jewish legacy of the slave trade in this country? I'm running for office and I'd like your vote in 2020.
I actually live in San Diego, so,
That's all right. I'm running for national office. I'm running for president against Trump as a Democrat in 2020.
well, you might have my vote.
Let me tell you a little bit about Minister Louis Farrakhan. You heard of him before?
Unfortunately, I haven't. But I'm sorry, I really can't do a lot of things.
Okay, well, thanks for your time. Pat Little in 2020, we're going to end aid to Israel, which gets more aid than all of the other countries put together.
You just told me that I'm anti-white because I just called them Nazi. So you just shook hands with Nazi.
I actually work for a Jewish organization, so I don't know about.
Could I tell you about the history of the NAACP, how leadership was
Let me take a
hijacked
picture
away
of
from
you
the
guys
African
I don't want
Americans?
me
I
to
would
be
rather
on
not.
YouTube.
I don't consent to being part of your video, so I don't want to be.
Yeah, I don't want to be part of your video either. And
All right,
if
we're
I
going to
see
end
it-
aid to Israel and give us reparations to
If I
African
see it, I'm
descended,
going to.
African Americans
What's the
descended
name of your
slaves.
organization?
LittleRevolution.us. I ran against Feinstein in 2018 and I beat 20 candidates.
Tell me again what the name of your organization is.
Citizens to elect Little. LittleRevolution.us. Thank you. Don't
Do you
forget.
believe in Jesus Christ?
I believe he called out Jews.
Do you know that Jesus Christ was a Jew?
Did you know that he said Jews were of the synagogue of Satan?
Do you know that Jesus Christ was a
Did
Jew?
you know Jews were hunting down and killing Christians because of their faith for over 200 years after the execution of Christ?
Seriously, where'd you grow up?
I just answered your question.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Maine, but right now
Wow,
I'm living in
Maine.
California.
Like that. Maine is like a very peaceful place.
Yes, it is. Not too many Jews there. Have a good one.
There's a lot of Jews there.
Sure. Good afternoon, folks. Could I tell you about the Jewish legacy of slavery in this country and how I'd like to address it by ending aid to Israel and giving that as reparations to African Americans in this country?
We are not from there. We are foreigners. So
Oh, where are you from, ma'am?
Bulgaria.
Bulgaria. Oh, could I tell you about the current slave trade in European Slavic children that is being run by the Jews, centered in Tel Aviv? Have you heard of this before?
Yes.
Now, did you know that in the 90s and early 2000s, Eastern European women, young girls, were being trafficked at a rate of 500,000 little girls a year, prepubescent girls? Now, a lot of people say this was being done by the Russian mafia. Not correct. They call it Russian mafia is almost entirely made up of a certain ethnic group that has a homeland in Israel. And actually, after Putin came to power, most of the Russian mafia and oligarchs, as they're called, ran away to, you want to guess the country? It's where they had the breaking houses, where they break the spirit of the young women that they kidnap from Southern and Eastern Europe to put into a life of prostitution.
I don't know that.
Israel. Israel.
It depends. Everybody has a different theory. We are from over there, so our theory is a little bit different about it.
Okay, what's your theory on, so I'd like to end human trafficking, especially of underage children, and the sex trade.
I completely understand.
And I'd like the U.S. to contribute to that effort by identifying Israel as the human trafficking hub center for the world of young, underage child prostitute trafficking.
Yeah, it is.
Made a terrorist threat, you go to jail. And you got it on camera. We got you on camera.
Good. I want to
You're
go to
going to
jail. You should go to jail.
That's what you did in Bolshevik Russia. You killed people for their ideas. And that's what
Really?
you're trying to do in this country.
You should get
Get the hell out of here. I serve my country, not Israel.
freaking Nazis walking around.
You're anti-white. You see this threat like you made a terrorist threat. You see your
Anti-white.
sister? You better get her in the car because if you continue, she's going to
Oh
be arrested.
yeah.
You just made a terrorist threat in front of me. No, there's nothing to do.
Just a moment.
Get away from us. We don't want to
She's
deal
a
with you.
provocateur. Show her your back.
Yeah.
Well, have a good day, folks. If you know any American citizens, tell them to vote Little in 2020. Have a good one. Good afternoon, folks. Could I tell you about the legacy of Jewish supremacism and their control of the slave trade in this country?
Yes.
Sure. Have a good one.
But it's public site.
So, you know, we have First Amendment rights. So,
All right.
Egress and egress of your business. You have no rights.
Sir,
We're just
How you doing?
cooperative.
What? I'm running for it. Plate.
He's a Massachusetts plate 5 Ford.
Well, that's battery right there. And that was a good duck, right? It went right over my shoulder. So, that's a little bit. I mean, hopefully that's a premonition there. It would be nice to liberate this country from Jewish supremacist control and end the persecution of ethnic and religious minorities.
oh, you too.
Thank you. Go little. So let's end that ethnic and religious minority persecution that's going on under the jackboot of the genocidal Israelis. Let's stop the Jewish supremacist control of our media so that Americans can be informed in an objective manner about the great issues of the day, both domestically and abroad. It's the only way we're going to be able to stop these aggressive neoconservative wars of expansion for Israel. So no more Iraq wars, no more Afghanistan wars, no more wars to protect the Jewish-controlled opioid trade, no more wars to expand Israel's borders. Good afternoon, folks. My name is Patrick Little. I'm running for office in 2020. Do you have a moment?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay. Vote Little in 2020. Thank you. Oh, good afternoon, sir. Could I tell you about the historical Jewish? That's great. Did we lose some people there?
Water.
Oh, yeah. Let's grab some water. I tell you one thing. You look forward and you think, oh great, it's going to be nice out, I'm going to go play in the woods, go swimming. And then you try and walk around in a shirt and tie and you sweat like a pig. Yeah, there is one thing about New England is it gets humid here in the summer. And, oh hold on, we're not New England anymore, are we? It's just south of New England. But California has that climate that spoils you. It stays around 70, 75 all year in Berkeley, and you get used to that. So I'm sweating a little bit more than I normally would, but, well, I might hop in a lake later in the day. Oh, good afternoon, ladies. Are you old enough to vote?
No.
Well, are you interested in applying to an elite university like Princeton when you're older? Oh, do you care to guess what percentage of Harvard University's graduate school is ethnically Jewish? The answer is 67%. They're less than 3% of top-performing high schools. Good afternoon, ladies. Do you care to guess which ethnic group owned 40% slaves before the Civil War in this country? All right. Well, they're reading. We'll leave them.
Go back on National Street down Washington. Go right through Kansas.
Good afternoon, ladies. I'm running for office in 2020. I was wondering if you had a moment to talk about some issues you were concerned with in politics nowadays.
You're running for office as what?
President.
What?
Yeah.
Of what?
I'm running as a Democrat, so I'm hoping to win the Democrat primary in 2020. So what's like the biggest issue to you today facing this country? Or you
Is
as,
it a Democrat party?
yeah, I'm running as a Democrat.
Are
I'm
you
hoping.
sure you're not a vote? They always say Democrat rather than Democrat.
No, I'm running as a Democrat.
What's your name?
Patrick Little. I just finished running against Feinstein in California. I beat 20 candidates, but unfortunately I didn't beat enough.
Okay.
So what would you say the greatest issue facing this country domestically is?
Who are you?
Oh, some of these guys have gotten attacked in the past, so they brought some people just to videotape the people that record my stream, because they gave him a concussion over in Washington just for video recording me. Yeah, we got attacked. It's okay. We filed the police report. So I'd like to talk about that sign.
You're running as a Democrat?
Yes. I'm against supremacism. Now, that's designed to trigger some questions. Ask me some questions about that sign.
You know, I don't believe that you are who you say you are. This
I
is
am.
all really creepy.
LittleRevolution.us. You can look it up. I just finished running for the Senate, U.S. Senate of California. There's a reason that sign is there. Would you like to talk about it?
Not particularly. Is it the same reason these guys are sort of looking like neo-Nazis over here?
Well, what is a Nazi? So if I were to talk...
No, go away.
Okay, 500 countries expelled the Jews before the Third Reich. Have a good day, ma'am. If you have a problem with Jewish supremacism, that just makes me a decent human being. Oh, good afternoon, sir. My name's Patrick Little, and I'd like to end aid to Israel and give it as reparations to the African Americans in this country descended of slaves. Would you like to talk about this for a little bit?
About what?
Well, have you heard of Minister Farrakhan?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, do you know what percentage of Jews before the Civil War in this country, according to the 1860 census, owned African slaves?
Do I know what quarter of?
What percentage of Jews? So, out of 100, how many of them owned African slaves before the Civil War?
I don't know. I can't take a guess.
Okay, 40%. Do you know what percentage of non-Jewish whites, so European whites, owned slaves before the Civil War?
No.
Less than 1%, 0.8%. So that
You
makes
said less than 1%.
less than 1%. This is according to the U.S. Census, and Minister Farrakhan can confirm. That makes Jews 50 times more likely to have an ancestor that owned an African slave in this country than a white man. Pretty crazy, right?
Yeah.
Now, I want to talk about supremacists and fairness and equality and admissions getting into places like Princeton. Now, I don't have the statistics for that elite school right now, but I can tell you about Harvard. And I'm going to quote to you from Jewish sources here. So, what if I were to tell you where there's a group of people that made up less than 2% of this country that took up almost every single seat in the Harvard graduate school? That's not fair, right? 2% of the country can't take up almost the whole dang elite school, right? Not fair. Well, this is the truth. So 1.7% of the United States population is ethnically Jewish, but they make up 67% of the graduate school student body at Harvard.
Jewish people.
Ethnic Jews. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Not just people that go to like Jewish churches and stuff, people that whose like parents are Jewish, where you can like blood test them, and like you blood test me, it'd be like this guy's a mix of like Irish, English, and some other stuff.
Yeah.
Blood test you probably got some African in you.
Yeah.
If you blood test someone that's Jewish, it says Jewish in it.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying, so people that would test that way on a test are taking up 67% or 2/3 of the graduate student body at Harvard. So you've heard a lot about white supremacism in the news and in the movies and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to guess who owns every single nationally syndicated news station in this country?
Well, I know about that. I know mainly Jewish people, right?
Jews, exclusively, yeah. And now, what about Hollywood studios? I think every single Hollywood studio...
Everybody knows that they would say Jewish people. A lot of percentage Hollywood also.
Now, well, let's see. You ever seen that movie Amistad about slavery? The transatlantic slave ships, like the guys that were dying on the slave ships?
I've never seen it.
So it's by Steven Spielberg. It's a Jew, and of course he tried to make it look like whites, Europeans were in charge of the slave trade. Not true at all. Almost every major slave ship, the big ones that most of the Africans died on crossing the Atlantic from Africa, owned by Jews, operated by Jews. I can show you the names of the ships, the names of the owners, according to the insurance companies. We have the records.
What? Ain't they like basically almost they all the same, man? Like from Europe?
Jews come from the Middle East, man.
They come from the Middle East?
Yeah. Some of them spent some time. So the type of Jew you're talking about is Ashkenazim. They spent a few hundred years in Europe, yeah. But they still you test the blood, they're still Jews. They didn't mix much. They're very ethnocentric. Actually, in Israel to this day, it's illegal for a rabbi to marry a Jew to a non-Jew.
Oh yeah.
But let's say that I go there and I'm like a European white Christian dude, and I'm like, okay, I'm in Israel now, or let's say I'm a Christian Palestinian, the natives there.
Yeah.
And let's say I were to fall in love with a Jewish woman who's born to Orthodox Jews.
Yeah.
So do you think we can get married?
I guess whatever, according to their law or whatever, I guess they wouldn't be able
That's illegal. Do you know what they've been... So there are some black-skinned African-descended Jews, right?
Yeah.
Ethiopian Jews. You heard of them?
Yeah.
Starting in the 1950s, can you guess what the Jews in Israel have been doing to them? Sterilizing them.
Push them to the side?
Sterilizing them. So like aiming radiation at their testicles or their ovaries and making them so they can't have kids.
Well, that's what they're doing it now?
They've been doing it since the 50s. Nowadays, it's a little different.
So you're saying... All right, when I watch commercials, they show Ethiopian kids, the little skinny, that's That's from them what they did to them.
It depends on. I don't know what year they stopped. They stopped in like the 80s or 90s. Now they do something different. So if you're African, if you're an African Jew and you want to live in Israel, you have to submit to supervised forced birth control sterilization. So if the African Ethiopian women that are Jewish religion want to live in Israel, they must submit to supervised forced sterilization or else they get deported. Pretty crazy, right?
Yeah.
What do you think would happen if white European Christians started doing that to Africans here?
It'd be a big thing.
It'd be a big thing. They're doing this in Israel. I swear to God. You can look up Minister Farrakhan. This is the God's honest truth. I swear to God. I'm not lying here.
Oh, this stuff Minister Farrakhan don't talk about?
There's actually a book that he wrote called
Yeah?
The Secret Relationship Between Jews and Blacks, Volume 1 and 2.
Okay.
And he cites almost exclusively from Jewish sources. He's not the only guy doing that. It's just
Yeah,
a
I know you're saying.
lot of people, when they see a white man saying this stuff, they say, nah, he's just a Nazi. He's just a white supremacist or something.
Yeah.
So I'm just showing you another source you can get it from. I don't think Mr. Farrakhan's a big fan of white men, but it's okay. He names the Jews, so I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
I understand, like, there are some things whites have done in the past that aren't all cool. I get that.
We all understand.
There have been conflicts, but I would like to talk about the Jewish legacy of slavery. So do you know who ran the slave trade in Arabia? You heard, like, you've seen Aladdin.
I know about Arabia slave trade and all that.
But do you know who ran it? It wasn't Arabs.
I can't say they didn't.
It was the Jews.
The Jews had power over them.
They owned the slave trade and the slave markets there in Arabia, as well as the Ottoman Empire, Berber North Africa, and South America. So the largest market for black African slaves was in Brazil. It was ran by a guy who was, want to guess? The family that ran it was? Jews. Yeah, I swear to God, Portuguese Jews.
All right. Okay, I say this. All right, so the Europeans asked you how much percentage you said they had?
According to the U.S. Census in 1860, 0.8% of European Americans, white people, not Jewish.
So basically, you're saying the majority of the slave masters that so-called Africans had, they was Jewish. People that was the slave masters of the slaves.
I used to know the exact figures on that. I'm not sure, but what I can tell you, if you took 100 white people that weren't Jews, and you said slave owners step forward, 0.8 of one man would step forward. If you took a room of 100 Jews on average in the United States and asked slave owners to step forward, 40 of them would step forward.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. So that means to this day that if your ancestors are from the time of the Civil War, that your people have been here, like, that means a Jew is 50 times more likely to have an ancestor that owned African slaves than a white. And this brings me to what I want to do when I'm president. So Israel's committing genocide against the Palestinians, and they're both Christian and Muslim Palestinians, getting genocided by these Jewish supremacists. And they're using money that we're sending them. You know that Israel gets more money in foreign aid from the U.S. than every other country in the world we send aid to combined.
I know that.
Great, it's true. And they also, guess what? Do you think their standard of living is higher or lower than the average American?
I think their standard living is higher.
It is higher. So why are they getting all this aid if their standard of living is higher? It's because they run the government. Do you know what the largest lobby in Washington, D.C. is? It's larger than the oil, agribusiness, petroleum, you name it. All the other industries combined with their lobbies ain't as big as this one lobby, and it's a lobby for a foreign country. You want to guess which lobby that is?
You might have to tell me.
AIPAC, the lobby for Israel. You cross Israel, you don't stay in the Congress. There was this one guy named Jim Traficant that started talking about some of the stuff. Actually, he brought up the USS Liberty, where Israel did a terrorist attack against the U.S. ship in the 1960s, trying to blame it on Arabs. We have the proof. We can go into that another time if you like. Anyhow, he called that out. He wound up dead under his lawnmower, on his lawn in his property back in his home state. Okay. So, not many men have been in Congress and lived to talk about this stuff. Okay. It's pretty crazy, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to show you a few more facts with you. So, there was an ethnic group in the Soviet Union. In the 1920s and 30s, they made up 85% of the government while being less than 1% of the population. You want to guess what that group was?
Not really sure.
Jews.
Okay.
Now, do you want to know what type of laws this 85% Jewish government passed?
Well, I'd say type of law.
Yeah, what type of law?
Do it have anything to do with action, like as far as like if they what's one of the biggest laws that they break?
So they outlawed marriage, they outlawed Christianity, and they made all women public property. Pretty crazy, right? Now, do you want to guess how many people they killed? Christians, starting with priests and monks?
I don't know.
30 million people. Now, they grew up watching television, Hollywood movies, etc., right? How many million Jews did they say died in the Holocaust? They say 6 million. But, 30 is 5 times bigger than 6, right?
Yeah.
Now, how come you've never heard of this genocide that happened within 10 years of World War II? Pretty crazy, right? Now, what if I were to tell you this fits a pattern, that the Jews have committed more genocides than any other group in history?
That'd be something new to me.
Well, do you think it might be new to you because Jews run Hollywood?
I don't mean the Jews. I would say, you personally, like the way I look at it, I always thought they always the same. I ain't really think like it was a big difference.
Between what? Europeans and Jews? Well, that's a common misconception, because let me tell you a little thing. There was a study where they gauged different groups' attitudes towards each other. And so there's a control question and then the real question. Then they asked to support affirmative action in such a way that it hurts whites. Now, if Jews identify action to, do you support affirmative action that hurts whites? When you asked it the second way, it went up 10%. I can share the study with you. Pretty crazy, right? So the Jews sound like they identify with white people?
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't really know the difference. You're breaking it down to me now. Like,
well, if I went, as like a white American, if I went to like Africa and I went to like the Congo, I would see, they would still look more similar to me than if I went to like Asia versus like Mexico, right? So it's a common thing that Jews get identified as white. However, if a white man wants to move to Israel, he won't pass the blood test. You have to pass a blood test, a DNA test, to move to Israel. Yeah, actually, according to Jewish newspapers, they say, thank God for DNA testing. Now we can tell who the rulers are.
Do we have
Yes, they actually forced the African Jews to live in a completely different area than the non-African Jews. That's correct. And remember, there's the sterilization programs they have from Africans going back to the 50s, where they used to use radiation, now they use supervised forced birth control injections. You can look all this up. Minister Farrakhan, they took...
We have programs, like we have meetings.
Right now, so I just now have people that support me coming. I used to do this alone. I used to go out, I went into Oakland, I started talking about this just by myself with the phone. These guys heard what I was doing, and they said, you know what? We're going to come listen to this guy. And so now they listen and they give donations and getting up a lot of support. I ran against a dual citizen of Israel named Dianne Feinstein, right? So how can someone who's a citizen of a foreign country, has a house in Israel, vote in the U.S. Senate? Right. How? Like, let's say I was a citizen of Russia and I come over here and get U.S. citizenship. Like, could I, having citizenship in Russia, then also vote in the U.S. Senate? I mean, that's like, how do you know I'm not voting for things that help Russia? It's crazy, right? In the 1960s, the Supreme Court passed a special ruling allowing Jews to have dual citizenship between Israel and the United States. And currently, 8% of the U.S. Congress and Senate are comprised of Jews. All of them except one, that's Bernie Sanders, have dual citizenship with Israel. Pretty crazy, right? So every single Jewish member of the Senate and Congress has citizenship with Israel except for one. Crazy, right? I mean, some of these things add up. It starts to paint a little bit of a picture, right? So you know what the Jews did before they delivered African slaves to the Arabian slave markets in the 1660s? They were custom delivered to the Arabia with a very special customization. You know what that customization was for African males? They castrated them. They cut off their testicles and made them eunuchs.
I knew that.
Now, you think if you look up the histories of the Ottoman Empire and Arabia, these were Jews, the merchants that did this, not Arabs. Now, let me tell you about the USS Liberty in 1967. So Jewish pilots flew over the USS Liberty, jammed the radar so that they couldn't call an SOS call. It was a bright blue day. The USS Liberty was flying a giant garrison-sized American flag, racing it after they jammed their communication channels with machine gun cannon and rocket fire. They inflicted over two-thirds of the crew's seamen as casualties. And when they tried to lower the life rafts and perform triage emergency like CPR and stuff on the people they brought above deck, the Israelis dropped napalm on them. And we have the audio tapes proving they knew this was an American ship. Now, what happened when the American seamen tried to lower the ships down into the water? Guess what they did? It's a violation of the Geneva Convention, punishable by death in international court. They machine gunned the life rafts. Then they called in torpedo boats to finish off the job. One of the crewmen used an alternate channel to contact the Coast Guard, which relayed a message to the U.S. 6th Fleet saying the Jews are attacking us. Come save us. At that point, after their attack on the USS Liberty, which they already had the articles all printed up and ready to go, the Arabs had done it. Pretty crazy, right? Now, this was during the 6 Days War when the Jews were committing genocide against the Arabs in northern Egypt. There were entire villages. What's the name of the village right on the border with Israel that they wiped out there? Or whatever. Anyhow, they were stabbing pregnant Arab women in the stomach. It was genocide against ethnic and religious minorities. So to this day, I'm going to show you pictures. Can we pull up on the cell phone a picture of the shirt the Israeli snipers wear when they're hunting ethnic and religious minorities in Palestine? The 2 shots, 1 kill shirt, please, with the pregnant women. I'll do it.
I'm just curious why you're not pointing out like things other ethnicities have ever done.
Simple, because
like, why,
Jews control the movies and they control the news, so you're not going to hear about this unless it comes out television.
in Hollywood,
Yeah.
they
So
control the movies.
can you name a single nationally syndicated news station in this country that is not controlled by Jews? Just one.
I don't know. why.
Maybe Fox News. Maybe Fox News. Fox News is conservative, right? Could be controlled by Jews, right? You want to guess what the owners of Fox News are? You know, test their blood. They should yet they'd be allowed to move to Israel. They've got Jewish blood. Now they're called the Murdochs, but they're Orthodox Jews. They run News Corp. What about CNN? Okay, so both the right and the left couldn't be controlled by the same group, right? Could be Jews that run both the left and the right wing stations, right? Well, Zucker, CEO of CNN, sorry, Orthodox Jew. What about social media? Zuckerberg, you know, that's only like the new phone book for the world, but only like the most important social media, so he couldn't be owned by Jews, right? No, sorry, Zuckerberg, Jew. What about Google that controls what search results we get when you type in celebrity attack? Guess who controls what your search results are going to be? 2 Russian Jews. Yes, Sergey Brin and his co-founder of Google are Russian Jews. So here we go. 2 shots, 1 kill. Genocide in Palestine. Typical soldiers wearing the shirt. It says in Hebrew, left to right. 1 shot, 2 kills. Executing ethnic and religious minorities. By the way, going back to the 1950s, Israeli Jews sterilized Africans that want to immigrate to Israel. To this day, if an African Jew, an Ethiopian Jew, wants to live in Israel, they must submit to supervised forced birth control injections. You can look this up. This is a human rights violation. Even the UN has talked about it. You don't hear about it in the news because the Jews run it. You don't hear about it in Hollywood because the Jews run it. I'm telling you because you deserve the right to know about that. You also deserve to know that according to the 1860 U.S. Census, 40% of Jews in this country owned African slaves versus less than 1% of European whites.
Hey guys, how are you?
What's that?
1860 U.S. Census. Broken up line by line. So if there were 100 Jews in a room that were statistical sampling of the United States at that time, and you said step forward if you own a slave, 40 of them on a step forward.
We just want to make sure that
sampling or just an average group of 100 white people.
as long as you guys, I don't know. You know what? So when she explained that she had family in Auschwitz because of the sign.
I had relatives in all of them.
You did? Okay.
And he died there about 30 Russians who killed by 12 We never hear about that.
Right. So, but that's what I'm saying. So, as long as you guys are welcome to say whatever message you have to say. All that we ask as a police department is just the 2 things. Obviously, don't go into the street and impede traffic. And then if people are walking on the sidewalk, exactly. So, you know, okay, that's good. As long as you guys know that, you're good to go. You know, you're protected as well as they're protected. We're just here for everyone's safety. You know, we saw her brother, I guess, pull out, so we wanted to make sure that he didn't come out and do anything wrong to you guys, as well as, you know, making sure that, yeah, I mean, fair is fair. You guys got to do what you got.
67%, so 2/3 of the people at Harvard Graduate School are Jews, even though they're less than 2% of the country's population.
So, I don't get your point. Like, why is that a bad thing? And also, why do you think because they... You think that's supremacism?
Yes.
You think whites are being denied a position in a college?
All non-Jews are being denied seats at good colleges because the Jews are taking them all off. So let me tell you a little bit about
So the movie that we see called
Controlled by Jews.
was not true?
I think it was
Provocative purpose.
There's Jewish privilege, and Jews are not white. That's where the myth is white privilege.
I think there is most definitely white privilege.
Well, you know why I laugh at that? Can you guess what percentage of top-performing high school students were white in 2016? Non-Jewish white. European white. You want to guess? According to SAT scores, 70%. According to GPAs, it's 65%. Now,
That's not having privilege. That's just that they do well in school.
good. No, this is where the brain comes in. Now, can you get? So you would think 70% of the top performing high school students belong to Group A. You would then expect that 70% of the freshman incoming Harvard class would be part of Group A, right? Nope. Can you guess what percentage of the incoming class at Harvard University for the freshman year belong to Group A?
again, just
12%. 65 to 70% of top performing high school students. This group was given 12% of the freshman seats at Harvard. Jews are less than 3% of top performing high school students, but have 67% of the seats in the graduate school. This is supremacism, and we need to address it. It's also what's going on in minorities. They took over in about the 60s.
So you're saying they the problem?
Over.
Jewish supremacists are the problem.
and that's why you see so many officers. It's not that it was, we're all coming out because we're all angry.
There are white Jews.
Jews are from the Middle East. Jews are from the Middle East.
A lot of Jews are also
the
from
Genome
Europe.
Project, a Jew from Russia is 6 times more genetic related to a Jew from Syria than that Jew from Russia is to a non-Jewish Russian.
But I'm just confused because white supremacy isn't necessarily that. What do you want? Like,
What is white? Would you say European? Loosely European ancestors came from Europe at some point?
Thank you very much.
Anyone?
uh,
Like before colonization, can you name a single place on earth that had white people other than Europe? Okay, so you're white means European. That's great because Jews are from Mesopotamia and Palestine. So right there. So if you committed most of the slavery, if you committed genocide of 30 million people in the 1920s and 30s, where you killed all the Christians in the Soviet Union and your people made up 85% of the government, wouldn't you want to hide among a bigger group? If your group was guilty of massive supremacy, wouldn't you want to hide and camouflage yourself?
Amongst white people.
Yes,
You think
and we're getting blamed for all the sins of the Jews. It's terrible. 40% Jews were 50 times more likely to own African slaves before the Civil War than whites were. But we get blamed for slavery.
but you think there's no white privilege?
I mean, when you're 65 to 70% of the top performing high school students, but not even allowed even a fifth of that in representation
What
at the
about
school,
police
I'd
brutality
say that's
towards
like,
unarmed black males, for example?
I haven't studied that, but I'm sure that's
That is part of white privilege.
Well, let's talk about Jewish privilege. So, according to a movie called Definition, Africans are afraid to get involved with Jews in anything that could lead to a lawsuit. They said no matter what, the Jews got to win. So Africans wind up doing crime on the other people around, or have crime committed against them, because people are afraid of committing crime against the Jews. And blacks are over-criminalized and overly target their own fellow blacks, because they're afraid of being exposed to the law system. So yes, blacks are a victim of Jewish supremacism too. If you ask a black man in Brooklyn what happens, there's no such thing as a white Jew.
I didn't say white Jew, I said white supremacism. And there also is white supremacism.
White supremacism means European-blooded supremacism, and Jews are from the Middle East. They're Semites. They're more closely related to Arabs than they are to Europeans.
White people can also convert to Judaism.
Great point. That's a great point. Guess what happens? Let's say I go to a synagogue and say I want to marry a Jewish woman, converting to Orthodox Judaism, chop off the tip of my penis, circumcise me. Hallelujah, I'm a Jew. Do you think I get to move to Israel? Nope. They administer a blood test. Thank God for DNA testing.
So you're just saying that
Jewish Daily Forward. Yes, it is.
People are
The
just
Jewish
not
Daily
Jewish.
Forward. Can we pull up the Jewish Daily Forward article where they say Israel uses, it's a Jewish newspaper, Israel uses DNA testing to see who the real Jews are in immigration. Can we pull that up, please?
Pull up the Jewish DNA test.
Yeah, Jewish Daily Forward, Haaretz, Jewish Telegraph Agency. You should be able to find that in all 3 of those publications. Anyhow, while we get that information, that proof from you from Jewish newspapers meant for Jewish eyes, let's have some other questions.
So I'm guessing all y'all non-Jews
I want the Jews expelled from this country. They've been expelled from close to 1,000 countries before. You know what one of the main complaints that all these countries have when they kick the Jews out? Raping the children. Now you've heard about the Me Too
So
scandal.
no Christian people rape anybody, no Muslim people rape anybody, nobody else rapes except for Jewish people.
How many countries have the gypsies been kicked out? Because they're similar where they're a diaspora. How many countries? Not many.
Gypsy people aren't, that doesn't represent all of Judaism.
No, gypsies aren't Jews. So very few countries. So diaspora population, where you live outside your homeland. So gypsies and Jews are similar in that they're both diaspora. Gypsies have been kicked out of almost no countries, but they've been in Europe as long as the Jews have been. Now, Jews have been kicked out of every country they've ever been in except the United States.
So how do Jews have supremacy, and how do they hold all the power?
If they're getting kicked out
again and again.
Expulsion means they were doing something wrong. This doesn't happen to any other group. They were raping the kids according to all the rulers of these countries.
Just because a genocide happens to a population of people doesn't mean
Jews
that they were
committed the largest genocide in history at the time, where 30 million Christian Europeans were killed by Jews, 85% Jewish government, the Soviet Union in the 1920s and 1930s. Yet all we hear about in the Jewish media, the Jewish news, is Holocaust this, Holocaust that. 6 million is a heck of a lot less than 30 million, and not all rabbis were killed during World War II. However, every priest was killed by the Jews in the Soviet Union, every monk. They outlawed marriage and made every woman between the ages of 16 and 40 public property, and the Jews who ran the government issued vouchers to any man who would join the Communist Party for use of any woman in the country.
That's how they had that much power. How quote unquote, like Germany was able to put them in camp and overpower them. They had that much power.
There you go. That's Israel's immigration policy, DNA test. This is from a Jewish newspaper.
How do you know this real though?
Yeah.
Look it up. It's on their own website. Every day they publish new news. Jewish Telegraph Agency is one of the oldest Jewish newspapers in the world. Haaretz is one of the oldest Jewish newspapers. But Jerusalem Post is...
Exactly.
Well, you're right. Jewish news is normally not reliable. You're right. I mean, a good point. You got me there.
So
Jewish news is what told us there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Jewish news. Hold on. Can you name a single nationally syndicated news station, television news station that is known by Jews? We did this exercise earlier. Remember?
So many
CNN,
people in those companies that aren't Jewish. And how do you know just because they're Jewish, they're trying to cover it up?
CNN Jewish.
Jewish doesn't manipulate the news, like acting as
So when every single news station said there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and we invade Iraq, and then we offer $11 million proof for anyone that can step forward with proof that these weapons of mass destruction existed, can you guess how many of those Iraqis who were starving to death from the war were able to step forward and collect that $11 million? And it wasn't just the first person, anyone that had the evidence got the $11 million. Guess how many got rich? They wanted that money. Trust me, if there were weapons of mass destruction, those people were getting rich. Guess how many got rich? Guess how many collected that? $1 million, $11 million from the U.S. military.
You got to tell me. I don't know.
Zero, because there weren't any. So guess where the falsified intelligence came out that George Bush and Tony Blair were reading off to the whole world saying there are weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, so we need to invade them at the cost of hundreds of thousands of lives. Can you name the intelligence agency that provided that falsified intelligence?
So you think the person who controls it is...
Mossad, the intelligence agency of Israel.
Look, like, all right now, let's say this ain't up on the news. You think they're going to manipulate what you're saying?
I can show you tapes of my actual recording of what I did in the interview with the news. Not mishmash they did, but they played it.
That's called editing.
Yeah, but if I take a bunch of sentences and I say dead babies, and then a few sentences later say I like chocolate, and a few sentences later I say on Sundays, it says I like to kill dead chocolate babies on Sundays. That's the type of shit they do. I can show you the actual clips where I do like a full interview with them, and then they play something on the news. It's crazy. And I called them out right in the interview. I said, you're going to edit this.
Problem with them. Personal issue.
I'd say all non-Jews need to address Jewish supremacism if we want any chance of liberty and freedom.
That's going to cause too much confusion amongst each other.
Well, when we remove the
Where?
Jews from control of the media and the culture making institutions,
I said remove them. Who's going to be in control after we remove them?
Well, whoever does well at it. So instead of just people getting into Harvard because they're Jews, whoever does well on the tests, or whoever really wants to
where
get
is your data for any of
You
this?
think people get into
Hillel,
Harvard
the Jewish
just...
student organization. According to them, 2/3 of the Harvard graduate school last year was ethnically Jewish, despite being less than 3% of the top performing high school students. I'm quoting Jewish newspapers, Jewish student organizations. Why would the Jews lie to you about their own overrepresentation?
Overrepresentation of a minority group.
That's right. Yes.
That is literally an oxymoron. That can't
doesn't
exist.
make sense. That's not possible. It's literally a
What
minority
if
group.
white people were 2% of the population white European-blooded people.
Okay, so
were
then it'd be a
2% of the-
minority.
And so if there were 95% of the graduate school at Harvard, that wouldn't be overrepresentation? Okay, have a good day. I hope you guys didn't get into college. I hope to God they didn't pass the test to get into college. So, 2% of the country being 95% of an institution wouldn't be overrepresentation. At that point, you're dealing with intellectual dishonesty, and they're going to vote whichever way the Jewish news tells them to, regardless of how many facts you feed them. That's what we're fighting here. We're fighting ignorance. We're fighting willful blindness. We need to save our children from this Jewish indoctrination camp we call our culture-making institutions, our educational institutions. Literally, she just said 2 + 2 = 16. Literally, 2% of a group that's 2% of the population making up 90% of an institution didn't qualify as overrepresentation to them. That took out all political biases. That literally said, is that a ratio of greater than 1? A ratio of greater than 1 to 1 is overrepresentation by definition. And at that point, their minds are made up. I could feed them every fact in the world. Whoever's in power is whatever line they're going to toe. And that's the difference between a free-spirited American and someone that's a sheep. And right now, we're looking for the people that are shepherds to liberate these other sheep, because so long as the truth's being told in the media and in history classes, the sheep are going to be fine. But when you got the Jews in control, the sheep are getting fleeced, and all our money's going to Israel. We got to stop that. We got to help our developing communities here with the money we're sending over to very rich Israel, which has a higher standard of living than we do. Only a sheep could pair the stuff that those poor, young, indoctrinated sheep were buying at me. And my heart goes out to them, but at some point you have to realize there was no getting through the conditioning with them. They've made up their minds. And it's sad. How long have we been going on the live stream?
An hour and 7 minutes.
Well, I hope you guys all have a good day. We're going to head back to the vehicle just for safety's sake, keep the cameras rolling, but I'll ask you some questions in the last few minutes here.
The live chat got disconnected a while ago.
Oh, all right. They disabled it. Hopefully these people were OBSing it in real time, because they have a habit of getting rid of my videos. By the way, YouTube, right after we're done with the FEC complaints against Twitter, we're coming to get our money from you guys in damages after we get ruled in favor of for our FEC complaints. So stand by for lawsuits if you keep this stuff up. Ask Twitter how much they're spending on their lawyers trying to deal with us wanting fairness out of you guys who control this new internet media. Shameless, you Jews are shameless. And I have pictures of the CEO of YouTube standing next to the Prime Minister of the terrorist nation of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. Yeah, that's right. YouTube's controlled by Zionist Jews. And I guess this area is too. At least the cops weren't, because they let me keep speaking. They came, they investigated, and they left without bothering me. God bless the boys in blue here. Hopefully some of them are prior Marines, where we learned that you obey the Constitution and the law and not blind orders from above. If it's an unconstitutional order, you took an oath, you don't obey that order. So next time you got a Jewish governor or a Jewish mayor or something like telling you that you need to violate people's constitutional rights and shut down free speech that's critical of Jews, you need to say that's against the Constitution. I will not obey that order. And you look for the nearest political officer or authority figure that would then assume power after them in the chain of command, and they're now in charge. That's what you do when you get an unconstitutional order. This is Patrick Little signing off, saying God bless America and God bless you for watching, and hopefully the Jews stop censoring my political commentary. Have a good one.